Presidential candidate Andrew Yang is running on the Freedom Dividend, a plan that will give every American $1,000 a month. I don't know how people expect someone who's polling number 6 right now, running on this platform, to not know how, but the first question that comes to everyone's mind when they hear about universal basic income or the Freedom Dividend is, but how will he pay for it? Well, let's let him explain that in his own words.
How do you get, let's say, approximately $3 trillion a year to fund universal basic income? The first thing is it's not actually $3 trillion. And the reason why it's not $3 trillion is that if you look at what we're currently doing, we're spending about $1.5 trillion right now on 126 welfare programs and Social Security. And so if you show up to someone's door and say, hey, here's a dividend of $1,000 a month, but if you're already getting more than $1,000 in stuff, we're not just going to stack it on top. We're just going to say you're guaranteed $1,000, and if you're already getting more, then this doesn't touch you. You can keep your current stuff. If you're getting $700 in food stamps and whatnot, then you can just get $300 on top. So the $3 trillion actually shrinks a lot very fast because of the fact that about half of Americans are already getting various income support from the government. So the real price tag is closer to about $1.8 trillion if you say everyone who's 18 and up. Now, for context, the entire U.S. economy is now $20 trillion, up $5 trillion in the last 12 years, and the federal budget's $4 trillion. So you're looking at $1.8 trillion. It's a lot of money, but it's actually manageable. And one of the things that I haven't heard discussed here with you is that when you put money into people's hands, the money doesn't disappear. We all know that right now most Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 57% of Americans can't afford an unexpected $500 bill. So you put $1,000 a month into their hands, it's going to go right back into the economy. They're going to spend it on food, childcare, car repairs they've been putting off, the occasional night out. And then all of those businesses end up hiring more people, and then we end up getting some of the money back as tax revenues. So of the $1.8 trillion, we're going to get back, let's call it $400 billion in new tax receipts because everyone's going to be spending more money. We're going to save $100 to $200 billion on things like incarceration and homelessness services and emergency room healthcare. Everything we're talking about is at the margins. I mean, everything's like this statistical curve, and you're taking the people who are, let's call it like the last 10 to 20%. Mm-hmm. But if you reduce our incarcerated population by 10 to 20%, I mean, that's billions and billions of dollars. So you're saving money on a bunch of things we spend like about $1 trillion on right now, like healthcare, incarceration, homelessness services. And then the magic is that if you have $1,000 a month and you're a parent, so you feel this, that studies have shown that your kids are healthier, better nourished, more likely to graduate from high school and get further education, mental health improves, relationships improve, domestic violence goes down, hospital visits go down, and your worker productivity goes up. I mean, you're an entrepreneur and CEO, so you know when you run a company, you say, I'm going to invest in my people. I'm going to treat them well and try and train them and give them resources because you know that'll increase your productivity as an organization. In the public sector, we have the opposite approach. We're like, if I can just avoid spending money on you, then I'm going to somehow save money. When we end up spending that money in very, very dark, costly, counterproductive ways in the back end, because they wind up, in our institutions. And our institutions just spend a truckload of money. So if you look at the cost savings and the value gains and the economic growth, that actually gets you back about $1 trillion of the 1.8. This is like the trickle-up economy, because none of the money disappears. It goes right back into the economy. And the way you get the last $800 billion or so is related to what we think is happening with AI and all these advanced technologies. Because if you look at who's going to win with AI and self-driving cars and trucks, the savings from robot trucks are estimated to be $168 billion a year, just from that one thing. So the problem is that the American public is going to see very little of that money. Because the winners are going to be the trillion-dollar tech companies that are great at just not paying a lot of taxes. They'll move it through Ireland. Amazon will say, didn't make any money this quarter, no reason to pay taxes. And so what we need to do is we need to put in a new tax that actually gets the American public a slice of every robot truck mile, Amazon transaction, Facebook ad, and every other industrialized country already has this tax. It's called a value-added tax. And because our economy is so vast at 20 trillion, a value-added tax at even half the European level generates about 800 billion in new revenue, and that gets you all the way there. So this is much more achievable and affordable than most people think when they start unpacking how the numbers work out.
So essentially, it would be the biggest corporations, the companies that gain or that have the largest revenue. They're going to be paying most of this.
Yeah, but they're going to get some of that money back, obviously, because one of the things I say to the CEOs, it's like if everyone in Missouri is getting $1,000, you know Amazon's going to see some of that because they're just going to buy more stuff.
Right.
That's true for all of the big companies. What I say to CEOs, and I've spoken to groups of dozens of CEOs, what's really bad for your business is when people don't have money to spend. What's good for your business is when they do. So they're going to give up some money at the top end, but they're just going to end up getting it back when their consumers end up spending a bit more.
And has this been actually fleshed out, like the real numbers or the projections of how much they're going to get back?
Yeah. So the Roosevelt Institute studied this plan of everyone getting $1,000 a month and projected it would create 2 million new jobs and grow the economy by 8 to 10%. And then you can model out what that means to each business because in that climate, they're going to see a similar uptick in revenues.
Did they factor in all the jobs that are going to be lost?
So one of the things that's a misconception about universal basic income is that it somehow will facilitate job loss.
Well, for job losses, though, is the reason for universal basic income in the first place, right?
Yeah, which we're in the midst of right now. Like right now, as we're sitting here together, the labor force participation rate in the United States is 63%, which is the same levels as El Salvador and the Dominican Republic. That's right now. 94 million or so Americans have left the workforce over the last number of years. Now, a lot of that's natural demographics, a lot of that's people in school, but about 5 million of it is unskilled men who've gotten pushed out of the workforce. So again, this is not like we're going to solve a problem that's coming down the pike. Like we're actually in the middle of this problem. So if you put $1,000 a month into people's hands, it actually grows the economy and creates jobs because of more economic activity.
How much is this going to cost, and can we afford it?
Yes. So the headline cost is about $2.4 trillion per year. For context,
say that one more time.
$2.4 trillion a year would be the headline cost.
And the U.S. government currently spends just under $4 trillion a year.
The federal budget is $4 trillion. The economy is up to $19 trillion, up $4 trillion in the last 10 years. So $2.4 trillion seems like a lot, but if you break it down, it actually becomes affordable very quickly. Now, the big change we need to make is we need to be in position to harness the gains from artificial intelligence and new technologies. The big winners from those technologies are going to be Amazon, Google, Apple, Uber, like the mega tech companies with trillion-dollar valuations. And the trap we're in right now is that they do not pay a lot of tax. Amazon's trick is we didn't make any money this quarter, no taxes. Alphabet's trick is it all went through Ireland, nothing to see here. And so as these companies soak up more and more value, the public's going to be seeing less and less, even as the opportunities disappear. So what we need to do is we need to join every other industrialized country in the world and have a value-added tax, which would give the public a slice of every Google search and every Amazon transaction.
Which is the equivalent, from the consumer standpoint, of a consumption tax. That's how a lot of people will experience it, right?
Yeah, but it applies to businesses at every level of production, so it's like oxygen. And every other advanced country has already done this. Because our economy is so vast, a value-added tax at even half the European level would generate almost $1 trillion in revenue for the U.S. That, plus the $800 billion we currently spend on welfare spending, plus the fact that by putting $1,000 into the hands of American adults, you would grow the economy by 12% and we'd get back $500 billion in new tax revenue, plus the hundreds of billions we would save in healthcare, incarceration, homelessness services, and the massive value gains from having a population with higher education rates, better health, better nutrition, better mental health, better productivity. All of those things together would make the freedom dividend pay for itself and then some, conservatively. We have to start investing in our people. Good companies invest in their people, but then in the public space we say, oh, we have to try and treat everyone like costs and avoid spending money. And that's the opposite of what we need. We need to reverse the mindset of scarcity with a mindset of abundance. And the best way to do that is to secure Americans' futures.
Okay, so when some economists hear mindset of abundance, they think that's a lot more money flowing around the same economic system, We're giving a bunch of people who are only making, say, $20,000 a year an extra $12,000 a year. Why isn't inflation going to go completely crazy on a bunch of consumer staples, especially those that are overconsumed by the poorest Americans?
Well, if you look at the causes of inflation right now in the U.S., they tend to fall into three buckets: housing, education, and healthcare. If you look at consumer goods, they're actually not surging in price. A lot of them are even getting cheaper. So that's clothing, electronics, media, like the things that people consume. And so putting money into people's hands, there's no reason to think that it would cause a surge in the prices of these consumer goods where the market is quite efficient, because there's still going to be a lot of price sensitivity. It's not like these people all of a sudden are like, oh, I can pay $10 for a burger. It's like price sensitivity will still be there, and then there'll still be competition between firms in every particular industry and vertical. So really the cause of inflation right now in the US are around these protected dysfunctional markets of healthcare, education, and housing.
All right, last question before we turn to questions. Very quickly, why won't this make us all lazy? Why won't free money just turn us into a nation of layabouts?
Yes, so $1,000 a month is still below the poverty line in this country. The poverty line is $12,770. There is no reason to think that everyone's going to be like, oh, I've got $1,000 a month, I can live large and stay at home. Even if you're a server making $24,000 a year, are you really going to take a 50% pay cut and stay home? But if you keep working, you're up to $36,000. Maybe you can actually put a little bit of money away, start getting ahead, take your kid out for a movie. The data, and I'm a very data-driven guy, the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes numbers. And the data says that only two groups work fewer hours with more money: new mothers who spend more time with their kids, which I think we can all get behind, and teenagers who graduate from high school at higher levels.
Andrew, thank you.